of safety, security, and environmental protection. Now, in addition to playing their role in IMO, they also advise member governments on how best, once the IMO conventions are adopted, to implement and enforce the requirements in those conventions. There are areas, as I said before, where they voluntarily move over and above the requirements in the IMO conventions. And this, again, has to be appreciated. They have a role to play in the implementation and enforcement of mandatory measures. So IMO does not move and cannot move without the support of the industry and without the contribution of the organizations such as Intertanko, ISF, Intercargo, OCIMF, and all the others, and BIMCO, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. I saw you raised your hand just now.
Andreas Soman-Powell from BW Shipping. Mr. Mitropoulos, you mentioned of the need for balancing stakeholder opinions and coming up with practical solutions. One of the issues, I think, is some governments prefer not to have balanced or watered down solutions. And how great do you think the risk is today of unilateral action by governments, and what more can be done to ensure that we don't end up with a patchwork of regulations?
Well, very, very tricky question here on how to prevent the unilateral action.
Andreas, how are you? I was asking about your father, when we met at the dinner of ITOP, and he explained to me why you're not there. But thank you for the question. Yes, it is important that we always go for balanced decisions, as I explained before. And these decisions are in accordance with the requirement in Article 1 of the IMO Convention, which calls for the adoption of the highest practicable standards in matters affecting international shipping or shipping engaged in international trade, from the point of view of safety, efficiency of navigation, and environmental protection. And of course, in the aftermath of the September the 11th attacks in the United States, we have included security as an important part of our job. And as Mary said in her introductory remarks, we have acted with decisively fast to adopt the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code, just 15 months after the terrorists attacked the Pentagon and the towers in New York. We do it because this is the only way we can serve the industry. The standards have to be as high as possible, but at the same time they have to be practicable. Hence, the combination of the two words, very wise in my opinion, the highest practicable standards. Now, what we try to do, because otherwise you cannot serve an industry as international as shipping, we try to ensure that our standards are adopted by consensus. If you don't have consensus, then the chances of a successful implementation of an IMO standard for the benefit of the entire shipping will be doubtful. I would ask what chances of a good standard being implemented worldwide would be if a standard has been adopted by a 51 to 49% majority. That's why we give our members some more time to understand the implications of the measure which is on the table, to understand the ramifications of how it will be best implemented and what they have to do, not because we try to lower the standard to make it more attractive for as many members to agree to it and eventually to adopt it by consensus, but because by explaining to them the reasoning behind the standard and how best safety, security, and environmental protection will benefit as a result from the introduction of the standard, the whole objective will be properly achieved. So we try to do that. We give them time, we raise the standards, and we serve the industry. Now, there might be cases where some countries or regions have opted for unilateral or regional measures. And nothing can be more disastrous and dangerous for an industry as international as shipping if you have various standards applying in various parts of the world. The universality in the regulation of shipping will suffer. There will be confusion as to what applies on which ships, built as from when, in which parts of the world. There will be misunderstandings, anarchy in all respects. Everybody stands to suffer as a result of that. So for us, either double standards or unilateral measures or regional measures is an anathema. And we do everything possible to convince countries that there is no need, or regions, that there is no need for them to go for unilateral regional standards. I'll give you an example. There was a time, soon after the MEPC adopted the all-important regulations to accelerate the phasing out of single-hull tankers, which, by the way, will reach their terminal deadline in 2010, with certain exceptions. Well, after these amendments were adopted by the MEPC, but before they came into force, in accordance with the Marpol Convention 16 months later, we had to live with the existence of 3 different pieces of legislation regulating the same subject. We had OPA 90, the United States unilateral measures. We had the regulations of the European Union, which had come into force, and we had the pending to come into force amendments to the Marpol Convention. What kind of service are you rendering to an industry as international as shipping when you have 3 different regulations addressing the same issue at the same time? The words that I used before, the word is Greek, chaos. Chaos, confusion, misunderstanding, and all the rest. Thank you.
Any? Over there, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tor Svendsen from Norsk.
I know who you are.
Hello. Can I come with a little follow-up question? I think, Mr. Mitropoulos, you have given a very good explanation of the dilemma we are facing now at the present moment in time, where the IMO is working in my view, an excellent speed to achieve results, but of course where there are other political elements which is making the task of landing good regulations for the future difficult. The decision at the MEPC was, of course, to focus on the technical measures, the design index, the plans for energy efficiency in operation and things like that. Do you think it is possible to continue focusing on the technical and operational elements and leave the possible fiscal element until after the Copenhagen conference? Because it would, in theory, be much easier to deal with the fiscal after the global discussions have been completed. Now, in a way, to take the fiscal or political debate before Copenhagen in IMO is a big challenge. Or will that cause what was Andreas just mentioned, a reaction by unilateral action being taken? Because this is all a matter of timing. I have great confidence that if we map out the plan for the next 15, 20, 25 years, which is normally what most industries have started doing, I think we can achieve very satisfactory results. So it seems like we are all rushing towards a deadline in 2009 without it necessarily being important from the long-term perspective. It's a difficult question, but I would appreciate some comments on that.
The answer these days in the context of the world financial crisis is that extraordinary circumstances demand extraordinary solutions. So difficult questions provoke difficult answers. However, we should give the answers, and we should be clear as to what we want to achieve. As I was saying with my friends from the ministry and the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, we are engaged in a game of chess or poker with very strong political connotations. And it is important that we have the right sense of timing as to when to make the next move. The end result is that we work together so that by consensus we make decisions to serve the environment. Our targets should be in the order that I'll mention. Serve the environment, serve shipping, by side effects, keep intact the good name and reputation of IMO as the world body competent to deliver on safety, security, and environmental protection. There's no doubt about that. If we are to be successful in achieving these objectives, to me, it does not matter if we make decisions before the Copenhagen conference or we make decisions after the Copenhagen conference. What matters is that when the Copenhagen conference convenes, we can persuade our colleagues who will go there that IMO is serious about the environment and IMO wants to deliver. Wants to deliver on the technical aspect, which is our business. It is the area where we excel, and in the so-called market-based mechanisms, which may be reflected in either emission trading schemes or fuel levy. This is something that I put to the MEPC in my opening speech on Monday of last week, that before the committee makes decisions on this, it has to give very clear answers to two very clear questions. One, how is the environment going to benefit from the introduction of market-based mechanisms? And two, if the answer is yes, two, how will in practice this work in an industry as international as shipping? Once we have the decisions, we can move on. But the question as to whether we will have adopted measures before the Copenhagen conference, the result of last week's MEPC does not convince me that we'll be able to do that. We'll try our best. And as I said in my speech, the July 2009 session of the MEPC will be critical. We can make tremendous progress in the technical part of it, the so-called energy efficiency design index for new ships, the energy efficiency operational index, the management code, the management plan for ships, the code of best practice. All these areas, we can make tremendous progress. And then we'll see what to do with the other part of the action plan, which calls for market-based mechanisms. But the question is not this. The question is that if we are able to conclude our work, fine. But there may be governments who will go to Copenhagen without feeling that their hands are tied because IMO has already made decisions. This may, in the wider picture of the issue, this may not help them. And if they are not helped in this respect, they may cause a problem to shipping as well. So we have to be extremely careful on how to approach the issue. And it will be a question of a short period of time, before or after the Copenhagen conference. The end result will be the result we want. We all, with an interest in the environment, with a caring attitude vis-à-vis this beautiful planet, which we have neglected for a long period of time, all of us, we should ensure that its best interests are served, whether before the Copenhagen or after the Copenhagen, it doesn't matter, as long as the end result is what we all want to achieve.
Unless there's any further question on the environment, anybody else want to talk about the environment? Well, I think we've had 3 very good questions. One, what is the role of the industry on this? How do you achieve a balance without getting to the lowest common denominator? And I think you've correctly used the term highest practical standards. I think it has to be a practical and highest achievable. And of course, do we go to Copenhagen with a full package? Maybe that may not be possible, but the important thing is to give the assurance that IMO has the intention and has everything in hand so that it can continue to do its work in protecting the environment in a practical way. Now,
she should be Secretary General because she articulates the issues better than me.
Jobs available, is it? Well, now I think we can move on to other issues that the audience might be dying to ask, and I'm sure there will be those who want to move away from environment and talk about other imminent issues like what's happening in Somalia.
To help, yes, please.
My name is Sia. I work for Class Society ABS. I would like to ask a burning question on environment, actually, on greenhouse gas. And you mentioned just now, actually, in your speech, that the shipping industry has 75% of the third world population, well, in terms of tonnage, actually. But if you were to count the number of seafarers working on ships, perhaps we have a greater number than 75%. I would even say maybe 90% of people working in shipping is from the third world. Now, if you go back to the Kyoto Protocol, they have the clean development mechanism to help the third world. And that's how the first world or the Annex 1 countries are supposed to help the third world. Why don't we think of that? Why could we not use that clean development mechanism to help shipping? Has that been debated in IMO?
Your starting point was the care that we have to show about the seafarers, irrespective of their country or region of origin. And I would not agree with you more. That's why I want all ships to comply with whatever measures the community will agree to take to limit or reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But let's be clear on what we are talking about. Whether the health of the seafarers will be impaired by shipping operations is an area that one would put within our first effort to deal with atmospheric pollution. In other words, to reduce air pollutants, SOx and NOx emissions and particulate matter, which, because they are air pollutants, may have an impact on the health of the seafarers. And there we have made tremendous efforts and tremendous success. The other side is the greenhouse gas emissions, which have an impact on climate change and global warming, which, of course, by projection, will have an impact on the well-being of every human being on this planet. You're right about what you said. The Philippines, for example, supply some 20% of the world population of seafarers. And Asia is the leading continent in this respect. And we depend on Asian seafarers And we appreciate that, we recognize that, and we are grateful for that. But to take measures to support them in all respects, we do that. Now, you mentioned the clean management, the clean. Nothing wrong with that. That's why I said in my speech that in whatever we decide, we should take into account and pay particular attention to the potential of developing countries and how we can engage them positively and constructively to agree with others the best possible measures for the protection and preservation of the environment.
Yes, Ben.
Secretary General Mitropoulos, Barry Desker, the chairman of Jurong Port. I'd like to ask you whether, given the anticipated downturn in the global shipping sector in the light of the current financial and economic crisis, whether it is reasonable to expect the shipping community to meet the additional costs of reducing the carbon footprint of shipping. My second question, and this is a more general one, is that as a result of global warming, the Arctic Ocean is expected to be no longer ice-bound in the warmer months of the northern summer. This would open the Northeast Passage north of Russia between Europe and Northeast Asia. What do you anticipate would be the impact on shipping through the Straits of Malacca if this new route is open? It is anticipated at the earliest that this could take place in 2013 and most likely by 2025.
Two questions on the financial turmoil and whether the industry should make to bear all these costs for GHG emissions control and on the Arctic Ocean.
Not to leave you in suspense, I don't think that traffic through the Malacca Strait will decrease to the extent that you should start worrying. at least at this stage. It may take some time, but I don't think that percentage-wise the traffic will reduce because there will be other needs. Let's not forget that we have an ever-increasing population, the needs of which will continue to be fed by the means of transportation which has the ability to carry massive quantities of cargo over given distances on the planet. I've been asked how IMO would respond to the opening of the Northeast Passage that you mentioned. And of course, you may know that we have a code, we call it the Polar Code for the construction and equipment of ships that navigate in polar waters. And the question of the Antarctica is on our agenda every now and then, from the design, construction, and equipment of ships that navigate in polar waters, and more importantly, the question of these areas having adequate search and rescue facilities in case a ship is involved in an accident in these polar waters, and especially in our days when cruise ships try to find as sensational destinations as possible, they move away from the traditional areas of operation, from the Caribbean, from the Mediterranean, and they sail up to the Alaska, they sail up down to the Antarctica. IMO's response will be to study the circumstances and conditions of these voyages and come up with the best possible answers as far as safety is concerned, as far as the pollution, the protection of the marine environment is concerned. The first, the outlook. Let's not forget that we've had some 4 tremendous years of economic development during which we saw